Hey guys, and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to be reviewing the book called Bloodguard by Cecy Robson. So this book, I started reading it, I was trying to look on Goodreads. I started reading it for me and my cousin's TBR list for December. We started a new bookish podcast called Pins and Paperbacks, and right now it's a YouTube podcast, but we're branching out eventually. And so the challenge was to pick books on your TBR list and read only those books for the month, and Bloodguard was on them. So I'm going to be reviewing it today. I started it December 1st, and it's December 12th for me. Technically the 11th because I haven't gone to bed yet. So started it, finished it, and I was so excited and want to talk about this, so let's get into this. So you guys are probably watching this review well into the year because I started doing the TBR list with my cousin in October. So we have October, November, which I read a lot of books in November, and it's December, so I have a lot of reviews coming out. So it is Christmas, but by the time you guys are watching this, it's probably going to be like Valentine's Day or even beyond that. So just getting that out of the way. So immediately, first of all, the context behind this, I saw this book on Amazon a long time ago. I think it was like 2 years ago or something like that. And it was gorgeous. And I read the blurb and I was like, this is a book for me. It's about a male gladiator who is fighting kind of against his will in the arena. And I'm like, that is right up my alley. Like, if anybody's read Immortal, like, let's go. So I pre-ordered it, and it just got delayed for like a year or two, and I forgot all about it. And then randomly it got sent to me, and I was like, oh, this is a nice surprise. And I think that was in November when it finally came out, and so I was immediately had to add it to my TBR list for December. So first of all, look at this cover. Look at this sprayed edges, and look at this art, which is a scene from the book. I now know what this is, so I'm pretty excited about that. I am going to tear this up. Oh my gosh. Okay, and then the back. And then the actual, that's the hardback. It is one of the most gorgeous, actually it is the most gorgeous book I've ever seen. So basically, like I said, Leith is the main character. He is a gladiator in an arena in a fantasy world. It kind of has Rome feels, but it's not. The world itself is not compared to ancient Rome. It's a fantasy world. The Rome aspects are all about the gladiator arena and stuff like that, but it's fantasy. So I don't even know where to begin. Yeah, so he's in the arena, and basically you fight, and the only way to win your freedom is to become a Bloodguard, and that's like rare. It doesn't happen very often, and when you become a Bloodguard, you become titled and become a royal essentially. And so he's trying to become the Bloodguard basically, and that's the title. So the race building and the world building in this are so good. I don't know if it's because I've been reading a lot of romantasy lately where the world building is there, but it's not like Lord of the Rings level, or what, but I feel like I've been reading books that don't have a lot in there, because when I read this, it kind of put all the other ones like, oh, okay, well, this was a lot more detailed than some of the other books I've been reading lately, to the point where it was like trolls and ogres and elves and like dwarves and like different things. It's like very fantasy-like, but it adds racial details and cultural details that's so good, that really makes it stand out for me, as opposed to all the other books that I've been reading lately, because like one of them, I can't remember if it's the giants or the trolls, but one of them, it describes their jaw, the way their jaw is structured. They can't form words very well in human languages, and so they are monosyllabic. I can't pronounce it very well, but they can only speak one syllable words at a time, and not very well. And it's just this extra detail that just really stands out because it's just so detailed and realistic. The fight scenes in this are superb. This is the fantasy book with the best fighting. I'm just gonna say it. Best fighting I've ever read in a book before. And keep in mind, I've read like Fourth Wing and some other ones like that, but the fight scenes in this are amazing. And it's a very violent book, so if you don't like violence, you're not gonna like this. But for those of you who've read my books, if you've read the Rome arc in Immortal, very similar, but a little bit more extreme, a lot more extreme than the Rome arc and fantasy. So that gives you kind of an idea. This is very gritty, and it's very Game of Thronesy in the sense of the violence, the grit, the like down to earth, grounded in like reality and how dark history is, but like in a fantasy setting. There is a romance, and the romance does take a major part, but I would say it's not the biggest part. I get it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. And there's like the middle section has a lot of the romantic moments, and there are spicy moments toward the end ish, but until then it's actually pretty like off screen, and kind of more implied stuff. So this book did make me laugh. There is several funny, like, sarcastic comments that made me like laugh or snort sometimes. There was one circumstance though that is hilarious that I can't remember if it's in kind of the beginning, but it's one of those like one character makes an assumption about the other person's intentions, and it creates this awkward circumstance that is hilarious to read. And oh my gosh, I laughed so hard. It also made me cry toward the end. There was a twist that was thrown in that broke my heart, and I didn't see it coming, and I was so shocked. And it was like a twist that I could see having a plot line further on that would like destroyed everything. That was my check-in that I just posted today on my Pens and Paperbacks channel. Go check that out. I'll have a card here. And then after that, shortly after that twist, a bombshell was dropped, and this epic, like, I would say a climactic level end date, like it was toward the end, but it wasn't the end. But this climactic level, high stakes, epic battle fight sequence that I couldn't put down, that changed everything. And then it was just like blow after blow, twist after twist, leading up to the end, building up to the final boss fight, if you will, which is epic. And then the arena stuff, I just want to say the arena, I'm blocking the Christmas tree. Okay, I just want to say that the arena sequences in this are so creative. The way that they use the gladiator arena, like, for example, this isn't spoiling anything, but one of the fight scenes, the arena's flooded, and it's like more of a water fight sequence, but it's so realistic and so gritty and like it's just so good. And there's all kinds of different the magic building in this is really good, the race building, the culture building, the kingdom building, and the political stuff. There are actually, this book is not just gladiator fights, it's actually got political stuff in it, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But anyways, back to the arena. And so a lot of the like fantasy creatures, the creature building in this is also really good, in the magic and the sort of circumstances that are put in the arena, like that the characters are put in the arena for, are so creative. It just blew my mind how creative it was, on top of the fact that the fight scenes are so good. The best fight scenes I've ever seen. But like I said, it's not just about fight scenes in this. There is another character, POV, introduced that is the main love interest. Her name is Maeve, and she's kind of like a princess basically, and I really love the political situation going on with her and her family and the royal family and the regent and what's going on. I won't spoil that for you guys either, but I thought the circumstances around that was kind of unique and stuff. So her POV start picking up a little bit, and in the middle, I will admit, there was one of my complaints was the middle really hit this slump where, because the beginning is so good and so high paced, high stakes, and so intense with these gladiator fights and the arena fights and this high intensity stuff, and it was so well written that in the middle, where it slows down the pacing for the purpose of the story, so I do logically see why it was needed, but when that pacing slows down and we focus a little bit more on Maeve and a little bit more on the politics, it threw me off, because at first I was here under the impression, and I'm here for the gladiator fights and wasn't really here for politics, even though I really do love political schemes and stuff like that. Like, I love the TV show Reign. I've read a lot of books with politics in them. I love writing that kind of stuff too. It just wasn't expected for this particular book, if that makes sense. So that slowed me down, but it didn't last like but 4 or 5 chapters, and the pacing kind of picked back up again. The plot did. It was still kind of slow, but you also have to have recovery time, political scheming, you have to have ship moments, and then it picked right back up again with that twist, and that's when that twist changed everything, and it kind of just kept the stakes high from there. like I said, the gladiator fights in this, the arena fights, I just finished this book seconds before I started recording, and I'm still reeling from that last fight sequence. And they're not just one chapter and you're done. Like, these fight battles, like in the gladiator arena, like they take they last for several chapters, and it's like, oh my goodness, like, it's intense. It is so intense. It's extremely, extremely violent and extremely graphic. I actually think I found the farthest I've actually gone, like, in terms of how graphically violent it is, which is okay. Like, I still really, really enjoyed it. The monsters are described very well. I always talk about how good Cassandra Clare is at describing monsters, and recently Sarah J Maas in A Court of Silver Flames, I'll pop my review up here on the screen, she was really good at describing monsters. Also The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which I'll pop my review up here, but because I'll post that one first, obviously that was my November TBR, so I'll pop that one here. So the monsters in that one were really described well. The monsters in this one were described even better. And the main characters, like Leith, his voice and it's written in present tense, so I feel like we get a live play-by-play of his reaction to things, where things in the arena surprise him, how he deals with things, how he copes with things, his attitude. He has this really sarcastic, dark sense of humor at the same time that he's really angry and bitter, and it just works together so well to create this really fun character to read. I would say Maeve started off as just kind of okay for me, and I got annoyed with her in the middle because it over-focused on her and the political stuff. And I do feel like one of the big issues I do have with Maeve with this book is actually Maeve's character, because at least for me, maybe I'm wrong, and if you've read this book, you can let me know in the comments below whether you agree or disagree. But for me, from the middle toward the end, Maeve's character kind of shifted, where she goes from being this healer who really genuinely cares and wants to help people to all of a sudden at the end, she becomes this ruthless warrior who will kill and slaughter her enemies. And it almost is like, well, because we have this tough baddie gladiator guy, you know, we have to make her do the same thing. And so she's put in a lot of the circumstances that did kind of focus on her and gave her a chance to kind of shine, if you will, which isn't a bad thing, but it just changed her character in this way that didn't make sense, because again, she started off as this princess and this healer, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I actually do like that kind of character, and she's strong in her own right and kind of witty, but it just got a little bit too extreme at the end, where all of a sudden now she's this big bad warrior. And it did have justifications for why she can fight. The fact that she can fight didn't bother me. It was how extreme it was and how willing she was to kill people. Granted, they were her enemies, and she did go through stuff that kind of changed that and justified it, but I noticed her attitude started being a lot more like Leith, and it's like, oh, well, just because the guy is violent and graphic, the girl has to be now too, to keep up with that. And it just kind of came off, like, I don't know, it just felt weird to me. And it didn't feel natural, because I really liked her character, because I really love a healer, and I feel like in the beginning especially, the herbs and the medicines and like making, you know, that kind of stuff, the healing and recovery and the herbs and stuff, and how she knows how to doctor people, I really liked that. And I kind of wish it delved more into that, because it's like halfway through the book that stopped and it wasn't relevant to the story anymore, and then all of a sudden she's just this warrior who just wants to spill blood. And the least little thing, I'm talking like she would start punching like royals and noble people, and where before she would always talk about how her grandmother taught her to be calm and collected and be above everybody else, because you're going to be queen someday. And then at the end, she just kind of lost her crap and just, you know what I mean? And I get that she has a lot of enemies and she went through some stuff. They all did. But it just felt weird and out of character for her. And it's like halfway through the book, she became somebody different than who the original Maeve at the beginning of the book. Well, when she's introduced into the story, so it's not quite at the beginning, but by the end of the book, through the middle and the end, she started being a completely different Maeve than the one we had grown to know, and frankly the one that I had grown to like a lot, because like I said, I liked her character, and it works really well in the dynamic, because it offset Leith, because he's like this really violent, really angry, bitter gladiator who's in this situation he can't get out of, and he hates the royals, he hates Arrow, the kingdom, he hates everything they stand for. He's very violent, he has to be, he's very hardened, and she just wants to help people. She has these little lemurs she likes to keep. She's a healer. She loves going out in nature and like finding different herbs. And it really offset his personality. And then all of a sudden by the end of it, she's basically just a girl version of him. And it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And she also stopped just being calm, cool, collected. And it wasn't like I'm going through something and this is how I'm acting now. It was portrayed as if she was always that way, when that's not who we got to know her as when she first came into the story, if that makes any sense. So that was kind of annoying. But the thing is, for me, like, normally I'll dock points for one thing or another, like if the writing was bad or, you know, whatever. But for me, I feel like this book did so much for me that it's a 5-star read, because it made me laugh, it made me cry. It's the best world building I've read in a fantasy book in a long time, just because of the added details that add this level of realism that makes this world feel real, as opposed to some other ones that feel like fantasy worlds. This one feels like a legit world that could exist. Second, but also, it's also the best book that I've read that had fight sequences, and the male character is finally the main POV. We do get Maeve, and she does take more precedence from the middle to the end, again, where she changes, but he's still kind of the main focus. I mean, the book is called Bloodguard, and it's kind of about that, and even when it shifted to be like, oh, I'm the female character, and I now have to save myself, and he got yeeted out of the story for a bit, it comes back into focus, and so that ended really quickly. So it made me laugh, it made me cry. Best race building, world building, creature building for a long time. Best fight sequences. Finally, a male-centered book with a strong male lead that is like in this circumstance. It's really, you know, graphic and tortured and going through all of this stuff. And on top of that, it did make me mad as a reader, which is good because that's the emotions you're wanting to elicit. It made me also mad, and from a writer standpoint, from the complaints I've already told you about, the antagonists in this book are really good, and there's several twists thrown in there. And so for me, because it has so much, it's a 5-star read, because it's made me feel everything. And I remember when I first read the beginning, like I said, the fight scenes and the gladiator stuff and the circumstances that Leith is in, and Leith's character as a whole, if that was the main focus and you take out the middle and all the bits I talked about that I didn't like, this is the kind of book that I've waited my whole life to read or to write or whatever. Like, I remember saying that and thinking that until I got to the parts I didn't like. And so for me, it does everything. This book has everything, and it catered to me as a reader, and that's why I love it. Again, if you don't really care for violence and stuff, it's probably not going to be for you. And there is spicy scenes toward the end that are skippable. They're very skippable compared to, because it's not a romantasy. I wouldn't think. I mean, it kind of is. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a romantasy, because those kind of have this, like, they're gritty, but this takes the level of grit to like a Game of Thrones level of grit, if that makes any sense. So it's like it comes off as more than just a romance in the fantasy world. And a big focus is on the fight scenes, where in a lot of romantasies you get not fight scenes. You don't get too many of them, if that makes any sense. And big battle sequences and stuff like that. Like, that's not really a prominent thing in romantasies typically. So yeah, like I said, 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed it. I do recommend it. It's really good, especially if you like tortured male characters in the lead, and gladiator fight scenes and epic battles and creatures. I mean, it is just so gorgeous. And the kingdom situation is also really good. I did also forget to mention another thing that irritated me. There was this subplot in the middle of the book when it slowed down that started getting political, where it kind of implied that Arrow is the main kingdom, and this whole book is set up to be Arrow is corrupt, it's evil, it's hurting people, and I'm like, okay, I'm all for a society that oppresses other people. I like that trope. And then the heroes have to try to overcome that or navigate in that oppressive society. And gladiator tropes work well when you have a male character who's forced to be a gladiator with a society or kingdom that's oppressing them. I've done that trope so many times. I still love it. I will still do it. I will still read it. So I loved that, but eventually it gets to that slow part in the middle I talked about, where it starts kind of like implying that they don't let immigrants in. They're hoarding their resources for themselves, and the immigrants are being caught across the borders, and they're just trying to get to this great nation that's supposed to be caring for them that is now not letting them in. And the open border policy worked better, and the poor immigrants, and it kind of started to parallel real life politics too much. That was also like woke politics that I disagree with. I don't like illegal immigrants. If you want to come into the country, come in legally. But I didn't like how it implied that Arrow paralleled with America and that America was bad. Like, if you live in America, you are privileged compared to other countries around the world, especially third world countries or countries like North Korea that's oppressed and actually like oppressive and treating their people bad. So it's not, I love my country. I'm a huge like patriot, and like I love America. So that plot line really irked me, and that made the slow part harder for me to get through. But that was a couple of chapters, and then we moved past it, and it was kind of like a prominent thing. It was kind of like not a prominent thing anymore, and it kind of just, the plot line moved on. And it was still kind of a part of the society, but it wasn't brought up anymore because the plot line, like I said, moved on. So I was able to get past it, but I did want to note that that was something that also irritated me. And I just don't like when modern day politics are put into books that aren't subtle. Like, I prefer things to be subtle, like Star Wars. Like, at the time, George Lucas actually did kind of put some political stuff for the time that it came out, the original Star Wars, into that. But the subtle, you really have to look for it. That's how I prefer modern day politics to be, is subtle, where it's not that obvious. This was blatantly obvious. So it was just a little too in your face for me. But, you know, the other politics that do happen, though, were still pretty good. It kind of bored me because I'm like, let's get back to the fighting. Let's get back to Lathe. Let's get back to, you know, that kind of stuff. But it still worked, and it's still good. So I would say if you read this book, go in with the expectation that it's not just going to be all gladiators and fight scenes. It was kind of tough for me to change my mindset. But like I said, overall, 5-star read. This is one of my new favorite books, if not my favorite. I think this and Fourth Wing and Serpent in the Wings of Night are my 3 favorite books. And then I would say the ACOTAR books kind of fall after that. So, yeah. Bloodguard by Cecy Robson. I think I'm pronouncing it's Robson, but whatever. So what do you guys think of this video and your thoughts on Bloodguard? If you've read it, have you not? Have you read it? If you haven't, what do you think about all of this and my thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you liked my review of this book, Bloodguard, then check out my review of The Serpent in the Wings of Night. It was also a fun book that is another 5-star read for me, but find out why. I loved that book a lot. And also, don't forget to subscribe to my new book podcast with my cousin, Pins and Paperbacks, where we pick out books to read for the month, and then we talk about those books, and we also discuss other book-related content, like should book-to-movie adaptations not be made anymore, other bookish news and stuff that comes up in book theories with some of these book series that we like that we're waiting on the next book for. So I will have that here too, so subscribe to that channel because we need the subscribers, and we are excited to start our new Bookish podcast. Thank you guys, and don't forget to watch the video.